Hey nerds, it's Nathan, and today I'm coming at you outside, as you can probably hear that bird. Fuck off, bird. Terrible timing. I'm sorry if there's any wind feedback, but it is such an extraordinarily beautiful day outside. I couldn't help myself. If you can see behind me, I'm just in a little park near my house, and yeah, I had to come outside. I wanted to try recording outside, and we'll see how it goes. See how much background noise there is later. But today I'm talking to you about Ferrus Manus. Yeah, let me try and there we go. Ferrus Manus is a Warhammer 40k book. If you've never heard of Warhammer, the books, that's because Warhammer is a game. So I'm going to have to give you a little bit of context so this all kind of makes sense. Warhammer is a tabletop role-playing army game, but there is 30, almost 35, nearly 40 years of lore and canon and story, and it is huge. It is absolutely huge. It is a vast, immense world. It's also it's spectacular, really is. So just to try and condense it down a little bit so we know what we're talking about, one second. Bats! Just to condense it down a little bit, there is the God Emperor of all humanity, and he makes genetically perfect sons. He makes about 20 of them, I think, and they're called the Primarchs. And these books are the Horus Heresy Primarchs. Now, Horus is one of the Emperor's sons, and he betrays him, and it creates this whole storyline. And so there is a book for each Primarch, and it tells a small story. It looks into their life, their personalities, and more importantly, their legions and some of their battles coming up to the point of the Horus Heresy. If you are going to pick up these books, I would highly suggest looking into a little bit of the lore through some podcasts like Lorehammer, or going online to Lexicanum, because it is very vast. Like I said, this has been going on for 35 plus years, so there's immense amount of stories, there's immense amount of details. There's stories for each of the Primarchs, for the Emperor, battles against various alien races, against the human race, against Sun versus Sun, Legion v Legion. It's enormous. But just so I don't talk about the massiveness of the world, we're just going to talk about this one book that I've read so far. I really liked it. This was very different. This is very interesting. These are really short. It was about 215 somewhere around that, 215 pages. It's very powerful. There is so much hype. Everything is extra. The legions are the best. The Primarchs are better than the best. The Emperor is better than the best of the best. It just progressive. Everyone just one-ups each other. It's very. It sounds shit, but it actually isn't. It's quite interesting to see how they constantly idolize one another, especially when they're from higher and higher and higher ranks within their legions and their military. But what I will say is this is a hard read. Now, those who are accustomed to Warhammer, may understand what I'm talking about. They have their own descriptive language. So instead of saying they have a space military, they have the Astra Militarum, things of that nature. They twist words and give them a Latin spin-off to, instead of saying they were trying to gather the planet for their massive amount of factories and industry, they say, instead of saying a factory, they say a manufactorum. It's very over the top. And there's a very interesting part of the writing style where we do have multiple POVs, but it stays within the chapter. A lot of times, a lot of books, when they jump from character to character, they give them their own chapter. This book doesn't do that. We are literally moving from one person to another within the spaces of paragraphs with no ellipses, with no ... between the paragraphs to tell us that section has ended, this section continues. And at first that was very confusing, but once I sort of gathered what was happening and then I continued to read the book, it actually made a little bit of sense, because it continuously flows, because this is war, this is battle, this is military fantasy, or military sci-fi I should say. Military fiction is an interesting and kind of hard read as it is, because the author constantly has to try and describe something immense. Battle is immense, it's everywhere. And I think they're not separating what's happening to these characters simultaneously actually helps that. It actually helps push the idea that all the cogs are moving at once. Everything that creates the situation around us, pardon me, is it creates that almost sense of speed, urgency, how a situation escalates or unravels fast, and it's not individually chapter by chapter, it's not separated, because they all do interconnect. So once I realized what was happening, I think that really helped me grasp the flow of the book, and the flow of the book is actually quite spectacular, because we see what's happening in real time with everybody all at once. I think that's really interesting. The author of this particular book is David Guimere. I hope I'm doing that justice. I've butchered a lot of authors' names in the past. David Guimere turns the description of war into a very disturbing, poetic sonnet of gore. The descriptions of all the characters is one massive hype game, each character being an absolute magnificence greater than the last, and we get that throughout the book. One thing I will note is a small portion of the book is actually about the Primarch Ferrus Manus. Now I want to talk a little bit about the character and his legion. So Ferrus Manus is a very, very superior superhuman being, but his legions are all superhuman beings as well. He's just another step above, as I was saying earlier. Ferrus Manus is quite literally the Latin translation of Iorn Hands, and that's the name of his legion. And the reason he's called that, and the reason he named his legion that, is actually because once upon a time on his homeworld planet, he fought this mythical beast of proportion and drowned it in like a molten pool of liquid steel inside a volcano. Yes, it gets that epic, it gets that ridiculous, that much hype. He drowned a mythical beast in a pool of liquid metal inside a volcano, and he had to hold it under. So when he held it under, the metal wasn't like metal from our world. It responds differently. It crawled up his arms up to about the elbow, I think, or maybe even a bit higher, and then from that point on he had these silvery metallic-y hands, and that's where all this sort of comes from. That's where the name of his legion comes from. The level of respect and admiration and loyalty that these soldiers have for each other, that they have for their Primarch, and more importantly their God Emperor. We as people, us as people, could actually learn from this, to learn to build from this continuous love and admiration and respect. Like, it is beyond question. That's what it is. Like, it quite literally is. One legionnaire's brother to the other, if one is accused of something, the other would gladly lay down their life so that his brother is not persecuted or accused of things that they honestly believe he would not be capable of, even if he actually did do it. This is the level of respect that's inside them. Mind you, it is kind of built into them, literally, genetically, subconsciously, like, it's built into them. Within this particular world, the super soldiers are actually created from the genetic information of their Primarch, in this case, Ferrus. So they take on his physical traits as well as some of his personality traits, but they also kind of try to emulate him, the way Ferrus tries to emulate the Emperor. Ferrus is kind of obsessed with perfection. He's obsessed with trying to not necessarily be the best to be better than others, but simply just to be the best that they can be for the sake of it. He holds his own legions with such fervor, with such reverence, that he believes that they can do anything, and they don't want to let him down, so they try and make sure they can do anything. And this sometimes creates this really dangerous dynamic, I think, especially when it comes to war and it comes to battles and it comes to bonds between people, because he expects so much of them. They cannot fail. It's not they don't want to fail, it's they cannot, because they could not bear such shame. And whenever they fail, it reflects badly on him towards the Emperor, his father. He looks like a failure because of their failure, and so on and so on. He takes it personally. If they fail, he takes it as his own responsibility. It's a very, very deep psychological probing, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's a very serious psychological trait. I think that's the word I was looking for. That if we would see in real people, we would see people who don't want to disappoint their parents or their partners or their siblings, or they have such a competitive drive because they can't lose. We've seen that in people in real life, and it's dangerous. It corrupts them. It takes away the joy of certain things from them because they're always needing to win. Just gotta move this. Yep. Yeah, so this unreasonable standard is one thing, but the Primarch is a master craftsman. He's very tech savvy as well, and we see that in his legion as well. They want to be perfect. They want to be better. They want to be stronger. So they really push for mechanical augmentation, which is crazy because they're already genetically superior. They're already slightly like mechanically augmented as it is, but they want more. And by the end of this book, we see something which is one of the phrases from another faction in our universe. And the phrase is, "The flesh is weak." And this comes from two of the Primarch's legionaries who've been horribly injured during the battle, which is in this book. And a lot of their body is replaced with machinery. And this phrase, "the flesh is weak," this is actually part of the beginning of the downfall of Ferrus Manus's legion. If you understand the history, if you had a broad scope of the history, you would understand that phrase in and of itself is very, very dangerous, and it puts the legion on a path to a very, very, very dark future. I want to talk about the hype a little bit, and what I mean by that is, it's not the author is trying to hype you up or get you excited. I think the term extra might work a bit better, because that's what this is. Ferrus comes from a very cold, dark world. So when he has his massive, and I mean massive, warship, which is probably like the size of our continent, and I don't kid either, it's probably about that big. They're huge, like they're massive. He actually gets most of it floored with a particular volcanic stone, like a volcanic glass. He actually gets the whole floor marbled. And they actually keep the temperature within the place relatively cold, just like their planet, and the lights are dim. Like because he can't be on his home world, he replicates it within his ship, and it's so interesting to see the lengths that they go to for the things that they want, or the things that they feel that they need. And those of his soldiers that were not born on his home world, or at least collected and then turned into super soldiers from his home world, they kind of try and condition them a little bit that this is a proper way, this is a better way, that this is Ferrus Manus's way. I think I said that right. Ferrus Manus's way. Meh. It's very, very interesting to see that they would almost completely steal a planet's resource just to make sure he could have a small visual comfort from home, which is just nuts. Like, this stone is pretty much everywhere, but imagine trying to marble tile every road within your city. Like, that's essentially what he's doing. Like, imagine whatever suburb or town or city you live in, imagine instead of using cheap, reliable tar, they had giant marble squares. That's what we're talking about. That's the level that we go to. Our super soldiers are, I think, around 7 to 8 feet tall. And then our Primarchs are around 10 to 12 feet tall. And then the Emperor is about 15 feet tall, which is huge. That's like, that's massive. Like, that's 2 meters, I think. Actually, it's more than that. I'm going to check. I would like to know. Okay, so I was very wrong. It's not 2 meters. It's about 4.5 meters. I play D&D. I should know this. I should know how to convert. 4.5 meters. That's how tall the Emperor is. So that just gives you a small scope of the size of these beings. And when we go into description of what they look like with their ornate power armor and their weapons and everything else, like, it's just incredible. I'll show you the book. I'll show you the picture on the book so you can have a look. See if I can focus that. How good does that look? How good does that look? Like, all this innate, like the iron hands within the actual shoulder pommel, like everything about him. This massive, where are we? This massive power pack with all these gears and a chainsaw and lasers and shit on the top. And then we have his thunder hammer. Like, this is awesome. This visually is fucking awesome. And then descriptively is just as cool. When we actually look at the battles themselves, not just everything else that's happening within the situation, when we actually look at the battles themselves, I've never read military fiction. I've never read like sci-fi military sort of thing. So seeing those battles is very interesting from this point of view. It's very interesting from because we're looking at it from first person view on multiple fronts, all happening at the same time, and that just gives it almost like a continuity, a completion, if you will. I find that very interesting. I've read various battles before, and we kind of chop and change, and sometimes we go, this is happening with this character, and this is happening with this character, and yada yada yada, and we move in a linear motion between our characters, where with this we're moving almost like a spider web. We're all moving in slightly different directions, or maybe we're all moving from different directions to a singular point, I should say, all at the same time. I just think David has done a really, really good job at this. I don't actually have much more to say about this book. It was a very interesting read. For anyone who is interested in Warhammer the game, or they're into the game, they've seen the books, I would absolutely suggest picking up a book. I would, if you've never done either, when I was trying to figure out where to start, someone with a lot more experience within the Warhammer community, I said it again, Warhammer community, they told me to just start with a Primarch. Pick up a Primarch book and give it a read. Then if I like it, I can continue on, because there are dozens, and I mean this, dozens of stories revolving around each of these Primarchs, each of their legions, and depending on the massive timeline, their successor chapters, which are kind of like basically just offshoots, off branches to the main original legion under their Primarch. It is a huge world, huge lore. I would highly recommend that you listen to Lorehammer, got it right that time, or go to Lexicanum, and have a dig, have a look. Maybe even just Google the Primarchs and see which one you like. There are so many, and they are all so awesome. They're all ridiculously overpowered, overhyped. Their names are a little bit silly, but I think that's just to, I don't know, make a bit of balance. Like Lion L. Johnson, Sanguinius, and Sanguinius is leader of the Blood Angels, sanguine, blood, you know, Ferrus Manus, the Iron Hands, things of that nature. I actually love this book, honestly. It was epic, it was brutal, it was a tiny bit confronting, actually. There are certain lines written by David Guymere that I think really captured what happens to a person during wartime, what happens to a country, a world during wartime. Overall, I think it was exceptional. I really do. I think it was an exceptional book. It is incredibly short. It took me a while, but I think I read this in about 10 days. So that's not very much. I'm sure someone could do it in the afternoon. I'm heavily dyslexic. So it does take me an extraordinary amount of time to read. But I think if you're interested in big space opera, very like mechanically minded sci-fi military sort of things, I would very much recommend this book. Also, like as a collection wise, maybe I'll take a quick snap later of just the three of them next to it, the three that I have next to each other, because they look amazing with this gold. Oh no, some of mine has flaked away because it's been in my bag, but with this gold writing on the grey spine, it just looks beautiful, all lined up next to each other. Also, this has got to be, I think this book was about $30, and that is a bit pricey, but this is a hardback, and the quality of this book is unreal. The Black Library, which is this symbol here, if that focuses, a little hammer inside a pinwheel circle. The Black Library know how to make a fucking book. The paper is so thick and like just genuinely tough. Like each page feels like 2 pages. That's how thick it is. The ink on this is sensational. The fact that this is a hardcover with a full print image and not some stupid fucking dust sleeve. I hate dust sleeves. You can ask my wife. I read because they're so stupid. You have to take them off so you don't rip the fuck out of the book. Just the quality alone, just the quality, the physical quality of the book alone makes it worth the money. Then the story on top of it is an absolute cherry. It is really, really surprising. I don't think I've ever actually ranted about how good a book feels physically before, but these are amazing. The way the spine is done and knitted at the back, and there's like a felt or some kind of material underneath the spine, so that when you open it, you can open it all the way on either side and it won't be affected, and the book opens so it doesn't. Just incredible quality, incredible story, incredible author, and I really cannot wait to read the other two that I've got and then start collecting. I have Corax Corvi, I think I said that right, and then I also have Potrabo, which are 2 more Primarchs, and I've recently discovered Mortarion, so I'd like to see him as well. And if you can probably have a guess by the names, Mortarion is all about death. Yeah. Alright guys, I hope the wind and the traffic wasn't terrible in this microphone. It was a fucking lovely day outside, so I really enjoyed that. Go get yourself a Primarch book, and I'll see you later. Oh, and one more thing. A special shout out to my very good friends, Cass and Jay. Thank you for watching my videos. I love you both. Bye guys.